the beginning, when God Almighty had created our first parent Adam, together with all other earthly and heavenly bodies, he set him in paradise and forbade him, under penalty of eternal death, to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So long as Adam obeyed the divine precept, he had immortality and possessed all that he needed for perfect happiness. But when he had partaken of the forbidden fruit, he was, by the command of God, driven forth into this world, where he and his descendants have since that time suffered nothing but poverty, disease, anxiety, bitter sorrow, and death. If he had been obedient to the divine injunction, he would have lived 1,000 years in paradise in perfect happiness, and would have been translated to heaven. He would have lived 1,000 years in paradise in perfect happiness, and would then have been translated to heaven, and a like happy destiny would have awaited all his descendants. For his disobedience, God visited him with all manner of sufferings and diseases, but in his mercy also shewed him a medicine whereby the different defects brought in by sin might be remedied, and the pangs of hunger and disease resisted, as we are, for instance, preserved and strengthened by bodily meat and drink. It was on account of this original sin that Adam, in spite of his great wisdom and the many arts that God had taught him, could not accomplish his full 1,000 years. But if he had not known the virtues of herbs and the medicine, he would certainly not have lived as long as he did. When, however, at length his medicine would no longer avail to sustain life, he sent his son Seth to paradise to fetch the tree of life. This he obtained after a spiritual manner. But Seth did seek also, and was given some olives of the tree of the oil of mercy, which he planted on the grave of his father. From them sprang up the blessed tree of the Holy Cross, which through the atoning death of our Redeemer became to us, wretched, sinful men, and most potent tree of life, in gracious fulfillment of the request of our first parent, Adam. On the other hand, the suffering, disease, and imperfection brought not only upon men, but also upon plants and animals by the fall of Adam, found a remedy in that precious gift of Almighty God, which is called the elixir and tincture, and has power to purge away the imperfections, not only of human, but of metallic bodies, which excels all other medicines, as the brightness of the sun shames the moon and the stars. By means of this most noble medicine, many men from the death of Adam to the fourth monarchy procured for themselves perfect health and great length of days. Hence those who had a good knowledge of the medicine attained to 300 years, others to 400, some to 500, like Adam, others again to 900 like Methuselah and Noah, and some of their children to a longer period still, like Bakram, Ilreher, Calix, Hermes, Geber, Albanus, or Tulanus, Marianus, Alexander of Macedonia, Anaxagoras, Pythagoras, and many others who possessed the medicine of the blessed stone in silence, and neither used it for evil purposes nor made it known to the wicked, just as God himself has in all times hidden this knowledge from the proud, the impure, and the froward. But cease to wonder that God has put such excellent virtue into the stone, and has imparted to it the power of restoring animal bodies and of perfecting metals. For I hope to explain to you the whole matter in the 3 parts of my book, which I have entitled Glory of the World. If you will accept my teaching and follow my directions, you will be able to prove the truth of my assertions by your own happy experience. Now, when you have attained this great result, take care that you do not hide your talent. Use it for the solace of the suffering, the building of Christian schools and churches, and the glory of the Holy Trinity. Otherwise, God will call you to an eternal account for your criminal neglect of His gift. May God deign to keep us from such a sin and to establish us in His holy world. To the reader, if it should seem unto you a tedious matter, my friendly reader, to read through and digest my book, I advise you to cheer yourself on by bearing in mind the great object you have in view. If you do so, you will find the book very pleasant reading and a joy indeed. Since God, praise in all times be His holy and venerable name, in His unspeakable mercy, has made known to me the majesty of this most true and noble art, I am moved and constrained by brotherly love to shew you the manner of producing this treasure, in order that you may be able to avoid the ruinous trouble and expense to which I was put in the course of a long and fruitless search. I will endeavor to be as clear and outspoken as possible in order to vindicate myself from the possible charge of imposture, malice, and avarice. I am most anxious that the gift which God has committed to my trust shall not rust or rot or be useless in my hands. For this most precious medicine is so full of glorious potency as to be most justly styled the oil of mercy. For reasons which your own understanding will suggest to you, it is therefore unnecessary for me to go into this preliminary question at any great length. I may at once proceed to give you an account of the art itself, and to put you on your guard against all seducing deceivers, in short, to open up to you a true, unerring, and joyful road to the knowledge and possession of the stone, and to the operations of this art. Therefore I, who possess the stone and communicate to you this book, would faithfully admonish and beseech you to keep this my table of paradise and glory of the world, from all proud and unjust oppressors of the poor, from all presumptuous, shallow, scornful, calumnious, and wicked persons, so as not to put it into their hands on pain of God's everlasting punishment. I beseech you to take this warning to heart, but, on the other hand, to communicate and impart this my table to all true, poor, pious, honest, unbenevolent persons who will gratefully reverence and rightly use the merciful gift of God, and conceal it from the unworthy. Nevertheless, even if my book should find its way into the hands of wicked men, God will so smite them with blindness as to prevent them from apprehending too much of my meaning, and frustrate all their attempts to carry out my directions. For God knows how to confound the wicked, and bring their presumption to naught, as we are also told by David in his Psalms. Thine enemies shalt thou hold in thine hand, and shalt restrain them in the snares of their mind. I beseech you therefore, my sons, to give diligent heed to my teaching, then you will spend this life in health and happiness, and at length inherit everlasting joy. I pray that God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost may grant this my petition. An account of the true art. I make known to all ingenious students of this art that the sages are in the habit of using words which may convey either a true or a false impression, the former to their own disciples and children, the latter to the ignorant, the foolish, and the unworthy. Bear in mind that the philosophers themselves never make a false assertion. The mistake, if any, lies not with them, but with those whose dullness makes them slow to apprehend the meaning. Hence it comes that instead of the waters of the sages, these inexperienced persons take pyrites, salts, metals, and divers other substances which, though very expensive, are of no use whatsoever for our purpose, for no one would dream of buying the true matter at the apothecary's. Nay, that tradesman daily casts it into the street as worthless refuse. Yet the matter of our stone is found in all those things which are used by ignorant charlatans, for it is our stone, our salt, our mercury, our verdigris, halonature, salmiak, Mars, sulfur, and etc. It is not dug out with pickaxes from ordinary mountains, seeing that our stone is found in our mountains and springs, our salt is found in our salt spring, our metal in our earth, and from the same place we dig up our mercury and sulfur. But what we mean by our mines and springs these charlatans cannot understand, for God has blinded their minds and made gross their senses, and left them to carry on their experiments with all manner of false substances, nor do they seem able to perceive their error, or to be roused from their idle imaginations by persistent failure. Where they should have distilled with gentle heat, they sublime over a fierce fire and reduce their substance to ashes, instead of developing its inherent principles by vitalizing warmth. Again, when they should have dissolved, they coagulated instead, and so on. By these false methods, they could, of course, obtain no good result, but instead of blaming their own ignorance, they lay the fault on their teacher, and even deny the genuineness of our art. As a matter of fact, all their mistakes arise from their misinterpreting the meaning of words, which should have put them on the right scent. For instance, when the sages speak of calcining, these persons understand that word to mean burning, and consequently render their substance useless by burning it to ashes. When the sages dissolve or transmute into water, these shallow persons corrode with aqua fortis. They do not understand that the dissolution must be effected with something that is contained within our substance, and not by means of any foreign appliance. These foolish devices bear the same relation to our art that a dark hole bears to a transparent crystal. It is their own ignorance that prevents them from attaining to a true knowledge. But they put the blame on our writings and call us charlatans and impostors. They argue that if the stone could be found at whole, they must have discovered it long ago, their eyes being as keen and their minds as acute as they are. Behold, say they, how we have toiled day and night, how many books we have read, how many years we have spent in our laboratories. Surely if there were anything in this art, it could not have escaped us. By speaking thus, they only exhibit their own presumption and folly. They themselves have no eyes, and they make that an argument for blaspheming our high and holy art. Therefore you should first strive to make yourself acquainted with the secrets of nature's working, and with the elementary principles of the world, before you set your hand to this task. After acquiring this knowledge, carefully peruse this book from beginning to end. You will then be in a position to judge whether our art is true or false. You will also know what substance you must take, how you must prepare it, and how your ego search may be brought to a successful issue. Let me enjoin you therefore to preserve strict silence, to let anybody know what you're doing, and to keep a good heart. Then God will grant you the fulfillment of all your wishes. Here follows my own opinion and philosophical dictum. I now propose to put down a brief statement of the view which I take of this matter. He who understands my meaning may at once pass on to the opinions of the various sages, which I have placed at the end of my book. He who does not apprehend my meaning will find it explained in the following treatise. Since I know the blessed and true art, with the nature the matter of the stone, I have thought it my duty freely to communicate it to you, not in a lawyer's style, nor in pompous language, but in few and simple words. Whoever peruses this book carefully and with an elementary knowledge of natural relations cannot miss the secret which I intend to convey. I am afraid that I shall be overwhelmed with reproaches for speaking out with so much plainness, seeing that this art has never, from the beginning of the world, been so clearly explained as I mean to explain it in this book. Nevertheless, I am well aware that I am now declaring a secret which must forever remain hidden from the wise of this world, and from those who are established in their own conceits. But I must now proceed to give you the result of my experience, my beloved sons and disciples, and all ye that are students of this art. I herewith, in the fullness of Christian faith and charity, do make known to you that the philosopher's stone grows not only on our tree, but is found, as far as its effect and operation are concerned, in the fruit of all other trees, in all created things, in animals and vegetables, in things that grow and in things that do not grow. For when it rises, being stirred and distilled by the sun and the moon, it imparts their own peculiar form and properties to all living creatures. By a divine grace, it gives to flowers their special form and color, whether it be black, red, yellow, green, or white. In the same way, all metals and minerals derive their peculiar qualities from the operation of this stone. All things, I say, are endowed with their characteristic qualities by the operation of this stone, i.e., the conjunction of the sun and moon. For the sun is the father, and the moon the mother of the stone, and the stone unites in itself the virtues of both its parents. Such are the peculiar properties of our stone by which it may be known. If you understand the operation, the form, and the qualities of this stone, you will be able to prepare it. But if you do not, I faithfully counsel you to give up all thought of ever accomplishing this task. Observe, furthermore, how the seeds of all things that grow, as for instance grains of wheat or barley, spring forth from the ground by the operation of the stone and the developing influences of sun and moon. How they grow up into the air, are gradually matured, and bring forth fruit, which again must be sown in its own proper soil. The field is prepared for the grain, being well plowed up and manured with well-rotted dung, for the earth consumes and assimilates the manure, as the body assimilates its food, and separates the subtle from the gross. Therewith it calls forth the life of the seed, and nourishes it with its own proper milk, as a mother nourishes her infant, and causes it to increase in size and to grow upward. The earth separates, I say, the good from the bad, and imparts it as nutriment to all growing things. For the destruction of one thing is the generation of another. It is the same in our art, where the liquid receives its proper nutriment from the earth. Hence, the earth is the mother of all things that grow, and it must be manured, plowed, harrowed, and well prepared, in order that the corn may grow and triumph over the tares, and not be choked by them. A grain of wheat is raised from the ground through the distillation of the moisture of the sun and moon. If it has been sown in its own proper earth, the sun and moon must also impel it to bring forth fruit, if it is to bring forth fruit at all. For the sun is the father and the moon the mother of all things that grow. In the same way, in our soil and out of our seed, our stone grows through the distilling of the sun and moon, and as it grows it rises upwards, as it were, into the air, while its root remains in the ground. That which is above is even as that which is below. The same law prevails, there's no error or mistake. Again, as herbs grow upward, put forth glorious flowers and blossoms, and bear fruit, so our grain blossoms, matures its fruit, is threshed, sifted, purged of its chaff, and again put in the earth, whichever however must previously have been manured, harrowed, and otherwise prepared. When it has been placed in its natural soil and watered with rain and dew, the moisture of heaven, and roused into life by the warmth of the sun and moon, it produces fruit after its own kind. These two sowings are peculiar characteristics of our art. For the sun and moon are grain which we put into our soil as soul and spirit, and such as are the father and the mother will be the children that they generate. Thus, my sons, you know our stone, our earth, our grain, our meal, our ferment, our manure, our verdigris, our sun and moon. You understand our whole majesty, and may joyfully congratulate yourselves that you have at length risen above the level of those blind charlatans of whom I spoke. For this is unspeakable mercy. Let us render thanks and praise to the Creator of all things, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Concerning the origin of metals. My son, I will now proceed to explain to you more in detail the generation of the metals, and the way in which they receive their growth and development with their special form and quality. You will thereby be enabled to understand, even from the very foundation, with marvelous accuracy and clearness, the principle that underlies our whole art. Permit me therefore to inform you that all animals, trees, herbs, stones, metals, and minerals grow and attain to perfection without being necessarily touched by any human hand, for the seed is raised up from the ground, puts forth flowers and bears fruit, through the agency of natural influences. As it is with plants, so it is with metals. While they lie in the heart of the earth in their natural ore, they grow and are developed day by day through the influence of the four elements. Their fire is the splendor of the sun and moon. The earth conceives in her womb the splendor of the sun, and by it the siege of the metals are well and equally warmed. Just like the grain in the fields, through this warmth there's produced in the earth a vapor or spirit which rises upward and carries with it the most subtle elements. It might well be called a fifth element, for it is a quintessence and contains the most volatile parts of all the elements. This vapor strives to float upward through the summit of the mountains, but being covered with great rocks, they prevent it from doing so, for when it strikes against them, it is compelled to descend again. It is drawn up by the sun, it is forced down again by the rocks, and as it falls, the vapor is transmuted into a liquid, i.e. sulfur and mercury. Of each of these a part is left behind, but that which is volatile rises and descends again, more and more of it remaining behind and becoming fixed after each descent. This fixed substance is the metals, which cleave so firmly to the earth and the stones that they must be smelted out in a red-hot furnace. The grosser the stones and the earth of the mountains are, the less pure will the metal be. The more subtle the soil and the stones are, the more subtle will be the vapor and the sulfur and mercury formed by its condensation, and the purer these latter are, the purer of course will be the metals themselves be. When the earth and the stones of the mountain are gross, the sulfur and mercury must partake of this grossness and could not attain to their proper development. Hence arise the different metals, each after its own kind, for as each tree of the field has its own peculiar shape, appearance, and fruit, so each mountain bears its own particular ore. Those stones and that earth being the soil in which the metals grow. The quality of this soil is to a great extent dependent upon planetary influences. The nearer the mountains lie to the planets, the more do metals grow in them, for the qualities of metals are determined by planetary influences. Mountains that are turned upwards, the sun, have subtle stones and earth, and produce nothing but gold. If they are more conveniently situated for being influenced by the moon, their metallic substance is turned into silver. For all metals, when perfectly developed, must ultimately become moon and sun, though some need to be operated on by the sun and moon longer than others, for the sun is the father and the moon the mother of all things that grow. Thus, you see that gold glitters like the sun and silver like the moon. Now, children always resemble their parents, and all metallic bodies contain within themselves the properties of the sun, to change the baser metals into gold and silver. There is positively nothing wanting but gentle solar warmth. In this respect, there exists a close analogy between animal and vegetable growth. When the sun retires in the winter, the flowers droop and die, the trees shed their leaves, and all vegetable development is temporarily suspended. In the summer, again, when the heat of the sun is too great, not being sufficiently tempered by the cooling influences of the moon, all vegetation is withered and burnt up. If there's to be perfect growth, the sun and moon must work together, the one heating and the other cooling. If the influence of the moon prevails unduly, it must be corrected by the warmth of the sun. The excessive heat of the sun must be tempered by the coldness of the moon. All development is sustained by solar fire. Imperfect metals are what they are simply because they have not yet been duly developed by solar influences. Now, by the special grace of God, it is possible to bring this natural fire to bear on imperfect metals by means of our art, and to supply the conditions of metallic growth without any of the hindrances which in a natural state prevent perfection. Thus, by applying our natural fire, we can do more towards fixing imperfect bodies and metals in a moment than the sun in 1,000 years. For this reason, our stone has also power to cure all things that grow, acting on each one according to its kind. For our matter represents a perfect and inseparable union of the four elements, which indeed is the sum of our art, and is consequently able to reconcile and heal all discord in all manner of metals and in all things that grow, and to put to flight all diseases. For disease is discord of the element, one unduly lording it over the rest in animal as well as in metallic bodies. Now, as soon as our blessed medicine is applied, the elements are straightway purified and joined together in amity. Thus metallic bodies are fixed, animal bodies are made whole of all their diseases, gems and precious stones attain to their own proper perfection. You should also know that all stones are generated by the sun and moon out of the sulfur and volatile mercury. If they do not become metals, that is entirely due to their own grossness. In the same way, all plants are generated from sulfur and mercury, and that by the heat of the sun and moon. For the sun and moon are the mercury in our matter. The sun is warm and dry, the moon warm and moist. For in the earth is hid a warm and dry fire, and in that fire dwells warm and moist air, and from these is generated mercury, which is both warm and moist. Hence there may be distinguished two chief constituent principles, to wit, moist and dry, that is, earth, wind, and water, unto which mercury is conjoined, and the same is warm and moist. Mercury and sulfur in our substance and in all things spring from the moist and dry, the moist and dry being stirred by the warmth of the sun, and distilled and sublimed in each thing, according to a specific nature. Thus our stone is that mercury which is mixed of the dry and the moist. But the common mercury is useless for our purpose, for it is volatile, while our mercury is fixed and constant. Therefore have nothing to do with the common mercury, but take our mercury, which is the principle of growth in all bodies, whether human, vegetable, or metallic, which imparts to all flowers their fragrance and color. This mercury represents an harmonious mixture of the four elements, hot and dry, sun and moon. It is generated in the form of vapor. In the fields and on the mountains, by the warmth of the sun, that vapor is condensed into a moisture from which arise sulfur and mercury, and from them again metals. The same process takes place in our art, which represents the union of the warm and moist by means of warmth. For our substance is generated in the form of a vapor, out of warmth and moisture, and changed into sulfur. In this fire and water and nowhere else is our stone to be found. For the vapor carries upward with it most subtle earth, most subtle fire, most subtle water, and most subtle air, and thus presents a close union of the most subtle elements. This is the first matter and may be divided into water and earth. which two are again joined together by gentle heat. Even as in the wood mountains, mercury is joined with a quick earth and rare water by means of a temperate warmth, and in the long process of time it is converted into metal. So is it ordained in our art, and not otherwise does the process take place. When you therefore see that our substance, having been first generated in the form of a vapor, permits itself to be separated into water and earth, you may know that the stone is composed of the four elements. Know also that the vapor in the mountains is true mercury, which cannot be said of the ordinary mercury. For wherever there is vapor in the mountains, there is true mercury, which by ascending and descending in the manner described above, becomes fixed and inseparable from its earth, so that where the one is, there the other must abide. Thus I have told you plainly enough how the metals are generated, what mercury is, and how it is transmuted into metals. I will therefore conclude this part of my treatise and tell you in the following section how you may actually perform the chemical process. You see that it is not so incredible after all that all metals should be transmuted into gold and silver, and all animal bodies delivered from every kind of disease, and I hope and trust that God will permit you practically to experience the truth of this assertion. Now I will tell you how you must produce the fire and water in which is prepared the mercury required for the red and white tincture. Take fire, or the quicklime of the sages, which is the vital fire of all trees, and therein doth God himself burn by divine love. In it purify mercury and mortify it for the purposes of our art. Understand with vulgar mercury, which you wish to fix in water or fire. But the mercury which lies hidden in this water or fire is therein fixed of itself. The mercury which is in the fire must be decomposed, clarified, coagulated, unfixed with indelible living or divine fire, of that kind which God has placed in the sun, and wherein God himself burns as with divine love for the consolation of all mankind. Without this fire, our art cannot be brought to a successful issue. This is the fire of the sages, which they describe in such obscure terms as to have been the indirect cause of beguiling many innocent persons to their ruin, so even that they have perished in poverty because they knew not this fire of the philosophers. It is so precious that men have averred that the divine power itself works effectually in it. It has the purifying virtue of purgatory, and everything is rendered better by it. It is not wonderful, therefore, that a fire should be able to fix and clarify mercury, and to cleanse it from all grossness and impurity. The sages call it the living fire because God has endowed it with his own divine and vitalizing power. In the writings of the sages, this fire goes by different names. Some call it burnt wine. Others assign to it three names from the analogy of the three persons of the Holy Trinity: God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. Body, soul, and fire, or spirit. The sages further say, the fire is fire and also water, containing within itself both cold and heat, moisture and dryness. Nor can anything extinguish it but itself. Hence others say that it is an inextinguishable fire which is continually burning, purified and tinging all metals, consuming all their impurities, and combining mercury with the sun in so close an union that they become one and inseparable. Therefore, our great teachers say that as God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost are three persons, and yet but one God, so this fire unites these three things, namely, the body, spirit, and soul, or sun, mercury, and soul. The fire nourishes the soul, which binds together the body and the spirit, and thus all three become one and remain united forever. Again, as an ordinary fire, on being supplied with fuel, may spread and fill the whole world, so this tincture may be multiplied, and so this fire may enter into all metals, and one part of it has power to change 2, 3, or 500 parts of other metals into gold. Again, the sages call this fire the fire of the Holy Spirit because, as the divinity of Christ took upon itself true flesh and blood without forfeiting anything of its divine nature, so the sun, the moon, and Mercury are transmuted into the true tincture, which remains unaffected by all outward influences and endures, and will endure forever. Once more, as God feeds many wicked sinners with his blood, so this tincture tinges all gross and impure metals without being injured by contact with them. So also therefore may it be compared with the sacrosaintly sacrament of the most holy Eucharist, from which no sinner is excluded, how impure soever he may have been. You have thus been made acquainted with the all but miraculous virtue of this fire. Remember that no student of this art can possibly do without it. For another sage says, in this invisible fire you have the whole mystery of this art, as the three persons of the Holy Trinity are truly concluded in one substance. In this fire the true art is summed up in three palpable things, which yet are invisible and incomprehensible, like the Holy Spirit. Without those three things our art can never be brought to perfection. One of them is fire, the second water, the third earth. And all those three are invisibly present in one essence, and are the instrumental cause of all perfection in nature. Now will I also describe the operation of those three things in our art, and will at once begin with all three. Our wise teacher Plato says, every husbandman who sows good seed first chooses a fertile field, plows and manures it well, and weeds it of all tares. He also takes care that his own grain is free from every foreign admixture. When he has committed the seed to the ground, he needs moisture or rain to decompose the grain and to raise it to new life. He also requires fire, that is, the warmth of the sun, to bring it to maturity. The needs of our art are of an analogous nature. First you must prepare your seed, i.e. cleanse your matter from all impurity, by a method which you will find set forth at length in the Dicta of the Sages, which I subjoin to this treatise. Then you must have good soil in which to sow your Mercury and Sun. This earth must first be weeded of all foreign elements, if it is to yield a good crop. Hence, the sage enjoins us to sow the seed in a fruitful field which has been prepared with living fire, and it will produce much fruit. What is the urine of children? I will now truly inform you concerning the urine of children and all the sages. The spirit which is extracted from the metals is the urine of children, for it is the seed and the first principle of metals. Without this seed there's no consummation of our art, and no tincture either red or white. For the sulfur and mercury of gold are the red, the sulfur and mercury of silver are the white tincture. The mercury of the sun and moon fixes all mercury in imperfect metals and imparts excellence and durability even to common mercury. Dioscorides has written an elegant treatise concerning this urine of children, which he calls the first matter of metals. What is the mercury of the sages? Mercury is nothing but water and salt, which have been subjected for a long space of time to natural heat, so as to be united into one. This is mercury, or dry water, which is not moist and does not moisten anything. Of course I do not speak of crude common mercury, but of the mercury of the sages. The sages call it the fifth element. It is the vital principle which brings all plants to maturity and perfection. The other quintessence, which is in the earth and partly material, contains within itself its own seed which grows out of its soil. The heavenly quintessence comes to the aid of the earthly, removes the grossness of its earth, and brings the aforesaid seed to maturity. For Mercury and the celestial quintessence drain off all harmful moisture from the quintessence of the earth. This mercury is also called sulfur of the air. Sulfur being a hardening of mercury, or we may describe them as husband and wife, from whom issue many children in the earth. You must not think that I desire to hide from you my true meaning. Nay, I will further endeavor to illustrate it in the following way. Common sulfur, as you know, coagulates common mercury, for sulfur is poisonous and mercury deadly. How then can you obtain from either of them anything suitable for perfecting the other, seeing that both require to be assisted by some external agent? On the other hand, I tell you that if, after the conjunction of our fixed sulfur with our sublimed mercury, you sprinkle a mere particle of it upon crude mercury, the latter is at once brought to perfection. Again, you may clearly perceive that the quintessence of the earth has its operation in the winter, when the earth is closed up with frost, while the quintessence of the stars operates in the summertime, when it removes all that is injurious in the inferior quintessence, and thus quickens everything into vigorous growth. The two quintessences may also be driven off into water, and there conserved. In earthly manifestation you may behold in the colors of the rainbow, when the rays of the sun shine through the rain. But indeed, there's not a stone, an animal, or a plant that does not contain both quintessences. In short, they embody the secret of our whole magistery, and out of them our stone is prepared. Hermes in his emerald tablet expresses himself as follows: our blessed stone, which is of good substance and has a soul, ascends from earth to heaven and again descends from heaven to earth. Its effectual working is in the air. It is joined to Mercury, hence the sun is its father, the moon its mother. The wind has borne it in her womb, the earth is its nursing mother, and at length that which is above is also that which is below. The whole represents a natural mixture, for it is a stone and not a stone, fixed and volatile, body and soul, husband and wife, king and queen. Let what I have said suffice instead of many other words and parables. Composition. Albertus expresses himself thus concerning the conjunction of the stone: the elements are so subtle that no ordinary method of mingling will avail. They must first be dissolved into water and then mixed and placed in a warm spot, where they are united after a time by natural warmth. For the elixir and the two solutions must be conjoined in the proportion of 3 parts of the elixir and 1 part of the crushed body. This must again be coagulated and dissolved, and so also again, until the whole has become one, without any transmutation. All this is accomplished by the virtue of our mercurial water, for with it the body is dissolved. It is that which purifies, conjoins, dissolves, and makes red and white. Aristotle says of it as follows: this water is the earth in which Hermes bids us sow the seed. The sun, our moon, as senior hath it, for extraction of the divine water of sulfur, and Mercury, which is fire, warming and fructified by the ingenious virtue thereof. This is the Mercury, and that is the water which wets, not the hand. It is the Mercury which all sages have loved and used, and of which they have acknowledged the virtue so long as they lived. Chapter 5, Part 3. The third part of this treatise, containing the dicta of the sages. I will now proceed to quote the very words of the various sages in regard to this point, in order that you may the more easily understand our meaning. Know then that Almighty God first delivered this art to our father Adam in paradise, for as soon as he had created him and set him in the Garden of Eden, he imparted it to him in the following words: Adam, here are 2 things: that which is above is volatile, that which is below is fixed. These 2 things contain the whole mystery. Observe it well, and make not the virtue that slumbers therein known to thy children. For these 2 things shall serve thee, together with all other created things under heaven, and I will lay at thy feet all the excellence and power of this world, seeing that thou thyself art a small world. 2. Abel the son of Adam wrote thus in his Principles: after God had created our father Adam and set him in paradise, he subjected to his rule all animals, plants, minerals, and metals. For mine is the mountain of mountains, the stone of all stones, the tree of trees, the root of roots, the earth of earths. All these things he includes within himself, and God has given to him to be the preserver of all things. 3. Seth, the son of Adam, describes it thus: know, my children, that in proportion as the acid is subjected to coction by means of our art, and is reduced into ashes, the more of the substance is extracted, and becomes a white body. If you cook this well and free it from all blackness, it is changed into a stone, which is cold, a white stone, until it is crushed. Dissolve it in water of the mouth, which has been well tempered, and its whiteness will soon change to redness. The whole process is performed by means of this sharp acid and the power of God. 4 is Cindrus. Our great and precious matter is air, for air ameliorates the matter, whether the air be gross or tenuous, warm or moist. For the grossness of the air arises from the setting, the approach, and the rising of the sun. Thus the air may be hot or cold or dry and rarefied, and the degrees of this distinguish summer and winter. 5. Anaxagoras says, God in his goodness are the first principle of all things, therefore the mildness of God reigns even beneath the earth, being the substance of all things and thus also the substance beneath the earth. For the mildness of God mirrors itself in creating, and his integrity in the solidity that is beneath the earth. Now we cannot see his goodness except in bodily form. 6. Senior or Pandolphus says, I make known to posterity that the thinness or softness of air is in water, and is not severed from the other elements. If the earth had not its vital juice, no moisture would remain in it. 7. Aristeas delivers himself thus briefly, know that the earth is round and not flat, for if it were perfectly flat, the sun would shine everywhere at the same moment. 8. Pythagoras. That which is touched and not seen, also that which is known but not looked upon, these are only heaven and earth. Again, that which is not known is in the world, and is perceived by sight, hearing, smell, taste, or touch. Sight shews the difference between black and white, hearing between good and evil, taste between sweet and bitter, touch between subtle and gross, smell between fragrant and fetid. 9. Aristeas in his second table says, beat the body which I have made known to you into thin plates, pour thereon our salt water, i.e., water of life, and heat it with a gentle fire until its blackness disappears, and it becomes first white and then red. 10. Parmenides. The sages have written about many waters, stones, and metals for the purpose of deceiving you. You that desire a knowledge of our art, relinquish sun, moon, Saturn, and Venus for our ore and our earth. And why so? Everything is of the nature of no thing. 11. Lucas. Take the livid water of the moon and coagulate it, according to our custom. By those last words I mean that it is already coagulated. Take the livid water of the moon and put it on our earth, till it becomes white. Here then is our magnesia, and the nature of natures rejoice. 12. Ethel. Subject our stone to coction till it becomes as bright as white marble. Then it is made a great and effectual stone, sulfur having been added to sulfur, and preserving its property. 13. Pythagoras. We exhibit unto you the regimen concerning these things. The substance must drink its water like the fire of the moon, which you have prepared. It must continue drinking its own water and moisture till it turns white. 14. Philetus. Know ye, sons of philosophy, that the substance, the search after which reduces so many to beggary, is not more than one thing of most effectual properties. It is looked down upon by the ignorant but held in great esteem by the sages. Oh, how great is the folly, and how great also is the presumptuous ignorance of the vulgar herd. If you knew the virtue of this substance, kings, princes, and nobles would envy you. We sages call it the most sharp acid, and without this acid, nothing can be obtained, neither blackness, whiteness, nor the tincture. 14. Methuselah. With air, vapor, and spirit we shall have vulgar mercury changed into as good a silver as the nature of minerals will allow in the absence of heat. 16. Sixion. Ye sons of philosophy, if you would make our substance red, you must first make it white. Its three natures are summed up in whiteness and redness. Take therefore our Saturn, subject it to coction in aqua vitae until it turns white, becomes thick, and is coagulated, and then again till it becomes red. Then it is red lead, and without this lead of the sages, nothing can be effected. 17. Mundinus. Learn, O imitators of this art, that the philosophers have written variously of many gums in their books, but the substance they refer to is nothing but fixed and living water, out of which alone our noble stone can be prepared. Many seek what they call the essential gum and cannot find it. I reveal unto you the knowledge of this gum and the mystery which abides therein. Know that our gum is better than sun and moon. Therefore it is highly esteemed by the sages, though it is very cheap, and they say, take care that you do not waste any of our gum, but in their books they do not call it by its common name, and that is the reason why it is hidden from the many, according to the command which God gave to Adam. 18. Dardanius. Know, my sons, that the sages take a living and indestructible water. Do not then set your hands to this task until you know the power and efficacy of this water. For nothing can be done in our art without this indestructible water. For the sages have described its power and efficacy as being that of spiritual blood. Transmute this water into body and spirit, and then by the grace of God, you will have the spirit firmly fixed in the body. 19. Pythagoras, in his second book, delivers himself as follows. The sages have used different names for the substance and have told us to make the indestructible water white and red. They have also apparently indicated various methods, but they really agree with each other in regard to all essentials, and it is only their mystic language that causes a semblance of disagreement. Our stone is a stone and not a stone. It has neither the appearance nor the properties of stone, and yet it is a stone. Many have called it after the place where it is found, others after its color. 20. Neophytes. I bid you take that mystic substance, white magnesia, and have a care that the stone be pure and bright. Then place it in its aqueous vessel, and subject it to gentle heat, until it first becomes black, then again white, and then red. The whole process should be accomplished in 40 days. When you have done this, God shows you the first substance of the stone, which is an eagle stone and known to all men. 21. Theophilus. Take white magnesia, i.e. quicksilver, mingled with the moon. Pound it till it becomes thin water, subject it to coction for 40 days, then the flower of the sun will open with great splendor. Close well the mouth of the phial, and subject it to coction during 40 days, when you will obtain a beautiful water, which you must treat in the same way for another 40 days, until it is thoroughly purged of its blackness and becomes white and fragrant. 22. Baelis says, I bid you take mercury, which is the magnesia of the moon, and subject it in its body to coction, till it becomes soft, thin, and like flowering heat. Heat it again till all its moisture is coagulated, and it becomes a stone. 23. Bassan says, put the yellow matter into the bath, together with its spouse, and let not the bath be too hot, lest both be deprived of consciousness. Let a gentle temperature be kept up till the husband and the wife become one. Sprinkle it with its sweat and set it in a quiet place. Take care you do not drive off its virtue by too great heat. Honor then the king and his queen, and do not burn them. If you subject them to gentle heat, they will become first black, then white, and then red. If you understand this, blessed are ye, but if you do not, Blame not philosophy, but your own gross ignorance. 24. Aristotle. Know, my disciples, the sages call our stone sometimes earth, as sometimes water. Be directed in the regulation of your fire by the guidance of nature. In the liquid, there's first water, then a stone, then the earth of philosophers, in which they sow their grain, which springs up and bears fruit after its kind. 25. Agodius. Subject our earth to coction till it becomes the first substance, pound it to an impalpable dust, and again enclose it in its vessel, sprinkle it with its own moisture till an union is effected. Then look at it carefully, and if the water presents the appearance of this shape, continue to pound and heat, for if you cannot reduce it to water, the water cannot be found. In order to reduce it to water, you must stir up the body with fire. The water I speak of is not rainwater, but indestructible water which cannot exist without its body, which in its turn cannot exist or operate without its own indestructible water. 26. Siratus. What is required in our art is our water and our earth, which must become black, white, and red, with many intermediate colors which shew themselves successfully. Everything is generated through our living and indestructible water. True sages use nothing but this living water, which supersedes all other substances and processes. Coction, calefaction, distillation, sublimation, desiccation, humectation, albifaction, and rubefaction are all included in the natural development of this one substance. 27. Mosinus. The sages have described our substance and the method of its preparation under many names, and thus have led many astray who did not understand our writing. It is composed of red white sulfur and of mixed or indestructible water called permanent water. 28. Plato. Let it suffice you to dissolve bodies with this water, lest they be burned. Let the substance be washed with living water till all its blackness disappears and it becomes a white tincture. 29. Orphalus. First, subject the matter to gentle coction of a temperature such as that which our hen hatches her eggs, lest the moisture be burnt up and the spirit of our earth destroyed. Let the phial be tightly closed, that the earth may crush our substance and enable its spirit to be extracted. The sages say that quicksilver is extracted from the flour of our earth, and the water of our fire extracted from two things, and transmuted into our acid. But though they speak of many things, they mean only one thing, namely that indestructible water which is our substance and our acid. 30. Bathon. If you know the matter of our stone and the mode of regulating its coction, and the chromatic changes which it undergoes, as though it wished to warn you that its names are as numerous as the colors which it displays, then you may perform the putrefaction or first coction, which turns our stone quite black. By this sign you may know that you have the key to our art, and you will be able to transmute it into the mystic white and red. The sages say that the stone dissolves itself, coagulates itself, mortifies itself, and is quickened by its own inherent power, and that it changes itself to black, white, and red in Christian charity and fundamental truth. 31. Belodius. Take the stone which is round everywhere, and is called rebus, two thing, and grows in two mountains. Take it while it is still fresh, with its own proper blood. Its growth is in its skin, also in its flesh, and its food is in its blood, its habitation in the air. Take of it as much as you like, and plunge it into the bath. 32. Leah. The prophetess writes briefly thus: Know, Nathan, that the flour of gold is the stone, therefore subject it to heat during such a number of days till it assumed the dazzling appearance of white marble. 33. Alcaeus. You daily behold the mountains which contain the husband and wife. Hie you therefore to their caves and dig up their earth, before it perishes. 34. Bornellus. All ye lovers of this art, I say unto you, in faith and love, relinquish the multiplicity of your methods. Substances, for our substance is one thing, and is cold, living, and indestructible water. He that is led astray by many words will know the persons against whom he should be on his guard. 34. Hieronymus. Malignant men have darkened our art, perverting it with many words. They have called our earth and our sun, our gold, by many misleading names, their salting, dissolving, subliming, growing, pounding, reducing to an acid, and white sulfur. Their coction of the fiery vapor, its coagulation and transmutation into red sulfur, are nothing but different aspects of one and the same thing which, in its first stage, we may describe as incombustible and indestructible sulfur. 36. Hermes. Except ye convert the earth of our matter into fire, our acid will not ascend. 37. Pythagoras. In his fourth table says, how wonderful is the agreement of sages in the midst of difference. They all say that they have prepared the stone out of a substance which by the vulgar is looked upon as the vilest thing on earth. Indeed, if we were to tell the vulgar herd the ordinary name of our substance, they would look upon our assertion as a daring falsehood. But if they were acquainted with its virtue and efficacy, they would not despise that which is, in reality, the most precious thing in the world. God has concealed this mystery from the foolish, the ignorant, the wicked, and the scornful, in order that they may not use it for evil purposes. 38. Hyginus. Our stone is found in all mountains, all trees, all herbs and animals, and with all men. It wears many different colors, contains the four elements, and has been designated a microcosm. Can you not see, you ignorant seekers after the stone, who try and vainly try, such a multiplicity of substances and methods, that our stone is one earth and one sulfur, and that it grows in abundance before your very eyes? I will tell you where you may find it. The first spot is on the summit of 2 mountains, the second in all mountains, the third among the refuse in the street, the fourth in the trees and metals, the liquid of which is the sun and moon, Mercury, Saturn, and Jupiter. There is but one vessel, one method, and one consummation. 39. Marinus. Know that our matter is not in greater agreement with human nature than with anything else, for it is developed by putrefaction and transmutation. If it were not decomposed, nothing could be generated out of it. The goal of our art is not reached until sun and moon are conjoined and become, as it were, one body. 30. The emerald table. It is true without any error, and it is the sum of truth. That which is above is also that which is below, for the performance of the wonders of a certain one thing. And as all things arise from one stone, so also they were generated from one common substance, which includes the 4 elements created by God. And among other miracles, the said stone is born of the first matter. The sun is its father, the moon its mother. The wind bears it in its womb, and it is nursed by the earth. Itself is the father of the whole earth, and the whole potency thereof. If it be transmuted into earth, then the earth separates from the fire that which is most subtle from that which is hard, operating gently and with great artifice. Then the stone ascends from earth to heaven, and again descends from heaven to earth, and receives all the choicest influences of both heaven and earth. If you can perform this, you have the glory of the world, and are able to put to flight all diseases and to transmute all metals. It overcomes mercury, which is subtle, and penetrates all hard and solid bodies. Hence it is compared with the world. Hence I am called Hermes, having the 3 parts of the whole world of philosophy. 31. Leprinus says, the stone must be extracted from a twofold substance before you can obtain the elixir, which is fixed in one essence and derived from the one indispensable matter, which God has created and without which no one can attain the art. Both these parts must be purified before they are joined together afresh. The body must become different and so must the volatile spirit. Then you have the medicine, which restores health and imparts perfection to all things. The fixed and the volatile principle must be joined in an inseparable union, which defies even the destructive force of fire. 32. Lamech. In the stone of the philosophers are the first elements and the final colors of minerals, or so, spirit and body joined unto one. The stone which contains all these things is called Zebeth, and the working of nature has left it imperfect. 33. Socrates. A mystery is the life of all things or the water, for water dissolves the body into spirit and summons the living spirit from among the dead. My son, despise not my practical injunction, for it gives you, in a brief form, everything that you really need. 34. Alexander. The good need not remain concealed on account of the bad men that might abuse it, for God rules over all, according to his divine will. Observe therefore that the salt of the stone is derived from mercury, and is that matter most excellent of all things, of which we are in a search. The same also contains in itself all secrets. Mercury is a stone which is composed of the dry and the moist elements, which have been joined together by gentle heat in an inseparable union. 35. Senior teaches us to make the salt out of ashes and then by various processes to change it into the mercury of the sages, because our magistry is dependent on our water alone and needs nothing else. 36. Rosarius. It is a stone and not a stone, viz. the ego stone. The substance has in its womb a stone, and when it is dissolved, the water that was coagulated in it bursts forth. Thus the stone is the extracted spirit of our indestructible body. It contains mercury or liquid water in its body or fixed earth, which retains its nature. This explanation is sufficiently plain. 37. Pamphilus. The salt of the gem is that which is in its own bowels. It ascends with the water to the top of the alembic, and after separation is once more united and made one body with it by means of natural warmth. Or we may with King Alexander liken the union to that of a soul with its body. 38. Democritus. Our substance is the conjunction of the dry and the moist elements, which are separated by a vapor or heat, and then transmuted into a liquid like water, in which our stone is found. For the vapor unites to the most subtle earth, the most subtle air, and contains all the most subtle elements. This first substance may be separated into water and earth, the latter being perceptible to the eye. The earth of the vapor is volatile when it ascends, but it is found fixed when the separation takes place. And when the elements are joined together, again it becomes fixed mercury. For the enjoyment of this, his precious gift, we sages ceaselessly praise and bless God's holy name. 39. Ceros. The body of the sages being calcined is called everlasting water, which permanently coagulates our mercury, and if the body has been purified and dissolved, the union is so close as to resist all efforts at separation. 40. Noah the man of God writes thus in his table, My children and brethren, know that no other stone is found in the world that has more virtue than this stone. No mortal man can find the true art without this stone. Blessed be the God of heaven who has created this property in the salt, even in the salt of the gem. 41. Menaldes. The fire of the sages may be extracted from all natural things and is called the quintessence. It is of earth, water, air, and fire. It has no cores of corruption or other contrary quality. 42. Hermes, in his second table, writes thus: dissolve the ashes in the second element and coagulate this substance into a stone. Let this be done several times, for as Naaman the Syrian was purged of his leprosy by washing himself 7 times in Jordan, so a substance must undergo a 7-fold cleansing by calcining and dissolving and exhibiting a variety of ever-deepening colors. In our water are hidden the 4 elements. On this earth, which swallows its water, is the dragon that swallows its tail, i.e., its strength. 43. Nondinus. The fire, which includes all our chemical processes, is 3-fold: the fiery element of the air, of water, and of the earth. This is all that our magistery requires. 44. Ananias. Know ye, scrutators of nature, that fire is the soul of everything, and that God himself is fire and soul, and the body cannot live without fire. For without fire the other elements have no efficacy. It is therefore a most holy, awful, and divine fire which abides with God himself in the most holy Trinity, for which also we give eternal thanks to God. 45. Bonitas. In the fountain of nature, our substance is found in nowhere else upon earth, and our stone is fire, and has been generated in fire, without, however, being consumed by the fire. 46. Rosinus. 2 things are hidden in 2 things, and indicate our stone. In earth is fire, and air and water, yet there are only 2 outward things, these earth and water. For mercury is our stone, consisting as it does both of moist and dry elements. Mercury is dry and moist in its very nature, and all things have their growth from the dry and moist elements. 47. Geber. We cannot find anything permanent or fixed in fire, but only a viscous natural moisture, which is the root of all metals. For our venerable stone nothing is required but mercurial substances, if they have been well purified by our art, and are able to resist the fierce heat of fire. This substance penetrates to the very roots of metals, overcomes their imperfect nature, and transmutes them, according to the virtue of the elixir or medicine. 48. Aros. Our medicine consists of 2 things and 1 essence. There's 1 mercury of a fixed and a volatile substance, composed of body and spirit, cold and moist, warm and dry. 49. Arnoldus. Let your only care be to regulate the coction of the mercurial substance, in proportion as it is itself dignified shall it dignify bodies. 50. Alphidius. Transmute the nature and you'll find what you want. For in our magistery we obtain first from the gross the subtle, or the spirit, then from the moist the dry, i.e., earth from water. Thus we transmute the corporeal into the spiritual, and the spiritual into the corporeal, the lowest into the highest, and the highest into the lowest. 51. Bernardus. The middle substance is nothing but coagulated mercury, and the first matter is nothing but 2-fold mercury. For our medicine is composed of 2 things, the fixed and the volatile, the corporeal and the spiritual, the cold and the warm, the moist and the dry. Mercury must be subjected to coction in a vessel with 3 divisions, that the dryness of the active fire may be changed into a vaporous moisture of the oil that surrounds the substance. Ordinary fire does not digest our substance, but its heat, converted into dryness, is the true fire. 52. Stephanus. Metals are earthly bodies and are generated in water. The water extracts a vapor from the stone, and out of the moisture of the earth by the operation of the sun, God lets gold grow and accumulate. Thus earth and water are united into a metallic body. 53. Guido Bonatus writes briefly concerning the quintessence as being purer than all elements. The quintessence contains the 4 elements, that is, the first matter out of which God has created, and still creates all things. It is held containing in a confused mixture the properties of every creature. 54. Alritos. The virtue and efficacy of everything is to be found in its quintessence, whether its nature be warm or cold, moist or dry. This quintessence gives out the sweetest fragrance that can be imagined, therefore the highest perfection is needed. 55. Longinus describes the process in the following terms: let your vessel be tightly closed and exposed to an even warmth. This water is prepared in dry ashes, and is subjected to coction till the two become one. When one is joined to the other, the body is brought back to its spirit. Then the fire must be strengthened till the fixed body retains that which is not fixed by its own heat. With this you can tinge 10,000 times 10,000 of other substances. 56. Hermes in his mystery says, know that our stone is lightly esteemed by the thankless multitude, but it is very precious to the sages. If princes knew how much gold can be made out of a particle of sun and of our stone, they would never suffer it to be taken out of their dominions. The sages rejoice when the bodies are dissolved, for our stone is prepared with 2 waters. It drives away all sickness from the deceased body, whether it be human or metallic. By means of our heart, we do in 1 month what nature cannot accomplish in 1,000 years, for we purify the pods and then join them together in an inseparable and indissoluble union. 57. Narrow. Know that our mercury is dry and moist and conjoined with the sun and moon. Sun and moon in nature are cold and moist, mercury and hot and dry sulfur, and both have their natural propagation by being joined in one thing. Here follows a true explanation of some of the foregoing philosophical dicta, the meaning, word for word and point for point, being clearly set forth. I now propose to say something about the meaning of the obscure and allegorical expressions used by some of the sages whom I have quoted. Be sure that they all were true sages and really possessed our stone. It may have been possessed by more persons since the time of Adam, but the above list includes all of whom I have heard. I need not here review all their sayings, for the words of the least of them are sufficient for imparting to you a knowledge of this art, and my ambition goes no higher than that. If I have enumerated so large a number of authorities, I have only done so in order that you might the better understand both the theory and practice of this art, and that you might be saved all unnecessary expense. For this reason, I have declared this true philosophy with all the skill that God has given me. I hope the initiated will overlook any verbal inaccuracy into which I have fallen, and that they will be induced by my example to abstain from willfully misleading anxious inquirers. I may have fallen into some errors of detail, but as to the gist of my work, I know what I have written, and that is God's own truth. Explanation of the saying of Adam. When God had created our first parent Adam, and set him in paradise, he shewed him 2 things, namely, earth and water. Earth is fixed and indestructible, water is volatile and vaporous. These 2 contain the elements of all created things. Water contains air and earth fire, and of these 4 things in the whole of creation is composed. In earth are enclosed fire, stones, minerals, salt, mercury, and all manner of metals. In water and in air, all manner of living and organic substances, such as beasts, birds, fishes, flesh, blood, bones, wood, trees, flowers, and leaves. To all these things God imparted their efficacy and virtue, and subjected them to the mastery and use of Adam. Hence, you may see how all these things are adapted to the human body and are such as to meet the requirements of his nature. He may incorporate the virtue of outward substances by assimilating them in the form of food. In the same way, his mind is suitably constructed for the purpose of gaining a rational knowledge of the physical world, That this is the case, you may see from the first chapter of Genesis. On the 6th day of the first year of the world, that is to say on the 15th day of March, God created the first man Adam of red earth in a field near Damascus with a beautiful body, and after his own image. When Adam was created he stood naked before the Lord, and with outstretched hands, rendered thanks to him, saying, O Lord, thy hands have shaped me. Now remember, I pray thee, the work of thy hands which thou hast clothed with flesh, and strengthened with bones, and granted me life and loving kindness. So the Lord endowed Adam with great wisdom and such marvelous insight that he immediately, without the help of any teacher, simply by virtue of his original righteousness, had a perfect knowledge of the 7 liberal arts, and of all animals, plants, stones, metals, and minerals. Nay, what is more, he had perfect understanding of the Holy Trinity, and of the coming of Christ in the flesh. Moreover, Adam was the Lord, King, and ruler of all other creatures which, at the divine bidding, were brought to him by the angel to receive their names. Thus all creatures acknowledged Adam as their Lord, seeing that it was he to whom the properties and virtues of all things were to be made known. Now the wisdom and knowledge of all things which Adam had received enabled him to observe the properties, the origin, and the end of all things. He noted the division and destruction, the birth and decay of physical substances. He saw that they derive their origin from the dry and the moist elements, and that they are again transmuted into the dry and the moist. Of all these things Adam took notice, and especially of that which is called the first matter. For he who knows how all things are transmuted into the first matter has no need to ask any questions. It was that which existed in the beginning before God created heaven and earth, and out of it may be made one new thing, which did not exist before, a new earth, fire, water, air, sun, moon, stars, in short, a new world. As in the beginning all things were created new, so there is a kind of new creation out of the first substance in our art. Now although God warned Adam generally not to reveal this first substance, viz. the moist and the dry elements, yet he permitted him to impart the knowledge to his son, Seth. Abel discovered the art for himself by the wisdom which God had given him, and inscribed an account of it on beechen tablets. He was also the first to discover the art of writing. Further, he foretold the destruction of the world by the flood, and wrote all these things on wooden tablets, and hid them in the pillar of stone, which was found long afterwards by the children of Israel. Thus you see that our art was a secret from the beginning, and a secret it will remain to the end of the world. For this reason it is necessary carefully to consider all that is said about it, and especially the words of the Lord to Adam, for they exhibit in a succinct form the secret of the whole art.